Hello, I am Alok and I'm the founder of FunnelStory. I'm recording a series of videos to demonstrate how FunnelStory can manage your product trials for you. We have overall 7 objectives to cover. In this specific video, I will be covering the first objective, that is how to get visibility into individual product trials. Now, for this demo, we will use Gitty as our demo B2B SaaS app. Now, Gitty is an open source application that resembles github.com in terms of functionality. I mean, you can check in code, create organizations, users, repositories, issues, a lot of things that are very similar to how we operate inside GitHub. Actually, for the purpose of this demo, we are going to use an internally hosted instance of Gitty that is currently being actively used by multiple users that are organized in different organizations. Just a matter of clarity, we have not made any changes in this instance of Gitty. The code base is exactly what is in the open source repository. We have not made any changes whether for instrumentation purpose or any other purpose whatsoever. So let's get started. So the first thing we are going to do is to create an account on FunnelStory. So let's click on Get Started for free and we come here. And I have chosen username and email address to create an account. Let me get the verification code. Okay, we have our code and we start the sign up process. So I can say Alok demo workspace and I will describe my role as product leadership, marketing leadership and other. Next, I want to use it for self-serve trials and also for sales-led go-to-market motions. So I'm going to choose Postgres, HubSpot, Intercom, Zendesk. What else? Let's stay with this for now. So get started. Okay. Okay. So we come here on the checklist. So as FunnelStory, the way FunnelStory operates is FunnelStory represents its data of a B2B SaaS app in a fundamental customer activity data model. That data model essentially is that you have accounts that have users that perform activities, and with this we generate signals. So this is the fundamental data model to represent most of the data that resides in FunnelStory. So to get started, and to configure visibility, we will start with adding an account model. So let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is to add a new connection. And in the case of Gitty, Gitty has a Postgres backend, so all the product data, the account and user and activity information is all stored in Postgres. So we will create a connection. It's a read-only connection, and you can create a private tunnel, but we don't need to do that because it's anyways a secured account for us. So let's do that. Let's provide all the information here. Okay, now let's validate the connection. Awesome. Now we add the connection. Okay, now we select this and we are beginning to create our account model. Accounts. Create a model, and now the first thing we have to do is that we have to create a query which essentially helps us get this information from the product data warehouse. That is account ID, the company ID if it is available, but the name of the account, the domain of the account, and when it was created. Not all data is mandatory, but account ID, name and created at least important, because that's how we are able to create a understanding of when this account was created, who those are, and we will use this information to connect it to the users also. So we have already done some work in the backend to create a query. So that query should get me all the information that we are looking for here. Let's validate the query. Query validated successfully. Go to the next step. This looks good. We proceed to the mapping. Now what mapping means is, yes, this is the data in the way it is written in the query results for coming from the data warehouse or the database, but we need to map it to the variable names that we have on our side on the FunnelStory. And once we get that, we are going to continue the sync with this view that we have generated based on the query continuously, and we will get to have the latest information on a periodic basis. So let's do the mapping here. ID, name, there should be a domain. Let's see. Oh yes, created. This is the time. And I think this much information is good enough. Let's test it out. Run a quick test. Looks good. Let's activate this model. Refresh our own accounting table and you will see what I'm referring to. Okay, good. Let's go to the account section. Awesome. We are already getting a list of all the accounts. Okay, let's go back. And now we need to create the user model. I have come here from configuration screen. I could have also gone to the checklist. The same thing will happen. So let's go to the user model. Awesome. Select the connection. We always select the Postgres data connection. Now I'm going to give the name to this user model. And now I will do the same thing. I have to provide a query and I have to get these 4 set of information by writing a SQL query. Let's do that. So here is the query, and now validate this query. Awesome. Proceed to preview. All looks good. Proceed to mappings. Same thing. Account ID is org ID. Name is name. Email is email. And created at. Awesome. Run a quick test. All things looks good. Enable the model. Refresh it. And we should see the impact of this information the moment the refresh is complete into the accounts table. Okay, the information has been refreshed. So let's look at the accounts view, and we can say that for organization we are now able to see the users. So we can see in some of the accounts where have most amount of users, so you can see that we already have this information. So that's great. Now what we will do is go back to the checklist and see what we have to do next. We have to add activities. So activity essentially means, so there are multiple types of activity. If I go here, actually I will cancel exit and I will show you going from this aspect. We have multiple types of activities like product activities that is done by the user inside the product. There are non-product activities that may happen outside of the product. Then there are feature activity that we want to track. These are product activities that we want to track as a feature activity, and you can read more about this in the documentation. And then there are other type of activities like support, when you file a ticket and when you have a conversation on the support ticket, or you're just asking questions on a chat bot. So that's a conversation activity, or you send an invite. So there are various kind of activity. Right now we will start with product activity, right? So let's get started with that. So we will create a project feature activity. Select the data source and let's get started with our first activity. So we are going to track how the new issues are getting created. Okay, now the same way we are going to start writing the queries. So the activity model has very specific type. We need activity ID, user ID, account ID, and timestamp. So let's find that out. Okay, we now have the query. Let's validate this query. Awesome. We proceed to the preview. Everything looks good. Proceed to mappings, activity ID, poster ID, which is the person with the user ID essentially, then account ID, we have that information, and we also have the timestamp. Test it, run a quick test. Awesome, looks good. Let's enable this activity. Once again refresh it so that we can map activities with the accounts and users in our accounts table. Okay, so what I did was that I took a pause in recording and configured the rest of the 6 more activities just to save on time. So actually 5 activities. So I had configured new issues, and now I configured repositories, watching the repo, creating a notification, creating an access token, and creating a new milestone. So we would be tracking all of these as product feature activities. So what I'm going to do now is to configure the subscription information. So again, the subscription information in Gitty's case is also present in one of the database table in Postgres. So we do that. We say subscription, name the model as it is, and write out the query. Okay, and let's validate the query. Awesome. Proceed to preview, looks good. Proceed to your mappings. Same thing. So the query model is a little bit different. We need information about account ID, what is the subscription types, from when they are valid, and till what time they are valid. So proceed, run a quick test. Yes, this looks good. And we are going to enable the subscription model. Great. So now we come, so this were all of the models that were configured out of the product database, or what we call the structured information. Now we have to configure something that is coming from the tracking of unstructured data, that is conversations or support ticket. So let me configure first a connection. So this unstructured tracking is done slightly differently. In the case of product database, we know what we want to track, but since every data source is defined in a different way, so we need the help to define a query that will give us the exact model that we're looking for. In the case of unstructured, most of these are well-known apps, so all we need to create a connection to those apps, and we can automatically figure out what is the data model and get the data from that app and convert that into activity model. And you will see how we do that. So what we'll do here is we have intercom, and then authorize this. Okay. Okay, it came here. Let's go back and look at the data model. So what it did was that not only it created a connection, but it also created a intercom conversation model. So it has never been refreshed. So what all we are going to do is refresh it, and we should have been able to get the conversations from the model. Awesome. So now we have 10 data models configured, which are one is account, user, there are 6 feature activities, one is subscription, and one is intercom conversations. So now if we look at the accounts view, we can see that we now have the information about each of the accounts, and our original objective was to be able to track the activities our objective, to go back, our core objective for this demo was to showcase that we can use FunnelStory to track all the activities that are happening for individual trials. So let's select one of the accounts that has a lot of activity. So if we go by activity score, in this case we have, let's say, last FM. This seems to have a lot of activities, so we can go back in time. So one of the things about connecting to a product data warehouse or product data source database is that there is a lot of data that is already present. If you go back in time, you can understand what happened before. If you connect with the tools like Segment, and if you have started to create instrumentation, let's say today, you would not have any idea what happened in the past, and that information can be really useful. So in this case, as we can see, that the account was actually created 10 months back, going back in time. and we can see multiple accounts were created, but around 6 minutes back the account was tagged with risk. There was a subscription created for that around 3 months back. That's very interesting. And because of the information, let's see, we don't see anything, but yeah, there was some activity on January 28th. That's a long time back. So there has been nothing here. But from our objective, we are able to see this account and see what has happened over the last 1 year, and we can now have gained visibility into this account. When things happened, how many people came in, who are the users, and specifically what they did. They just created an account, they did nothing. That's pretty interesting. We can go to activities and signal if there is something. I think they have just created a subscription, created a user, created an account, did nothing else. Let's see other accounts. If there is something else interesting we can see there. Let's say this one. So in this account, the account was created 7 months back. Then this user actually washed a repo 3 times 7 months back, created a new repository 7 months back, and created a subscription around 4 minutes back. So that's again is interesting. So what our core objective was, we have been able to achieve that. We have been able to create data models, and we have been able to gain visibility. I believe if we look at the overall time that I spent on this was less than 20-25 minutes, and we have been able to get complete visibility going back in time. Thank you for watching this. In the next demo, we are going to create a funnel here, and we will now distribute all of these accounts across multiple stages in funnel so that we can see which accounts are still early in their trial and which accounts have moved more closer to maybe buying your product. So we will look at that in the next demo. Thanks for watching.